Good evening and welcome to the June 5th, 2017 regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite our staffer from IT, Guy Goodenough, to come up to the podium and lead us in the pledge. Everyone can please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Guy. Next on our agenda is reflection. I'd like to call for a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Next, we have approval of minutes. Tonight we have two sets of minutes. The first being the regular minutes from the regular meeting of May 15th. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the minutes for the regular session on Monday, May 15th.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? One abstention, okay. So that carries 4-0 with one abstention from Councilmember Wu. Next, we have the minutes from the work session on May 22nd. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of the minutes from the work session of May 22nd.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. Next, we have presentations, and I would like to invite City Manager Tony Tomasello to join me up at the podium.
Thank you, Mayor. We're here to do the 2017 Employee Recognition Awards for the first quarter. We have an individual, Pam Truxell, who is not able to be with us tonight, so we'll thank her when we see her. And we'll move on to the team of the quarter, which is the phone system implementation team. I think we have four members. You could come up. The team of the quarter is the phone system implementation team. We have been planning and then eventually executing a plan to update and upgrade the city phone system, which connects to all the desktops and your cell phone and everything else. Quite a complex IT initiative for several years, and it was finally completed just recently, and that earned them the Team of the Quarter award. It's actually 12 members, essentially the entire IT department in both the major divisions of programming and networking. I'm not sure their exact names, and also the GIS division. So 4 of the 12 are with us here today. I think behind me is Guy Goodenough and Pete Cottrell and Jim Conway and somebody else, Rick Rouse. They were nominated for their extensive work in upgrading the city phone system, a massive undertaking requiring a tremendous amount of planning and work with outside contractors for wiring and other services. As the project affected every employee, IT staff had to work with every department and division within the city. They provided multiple training sessions. I've been on hand for several of them. And we're on hand to answer questions, resolve issues, which were really not that many. So congratulations on that. They worked many hours, including weekends, to minimize disruptions and keep the project on schedule. The results of the team's efforts have been very positive and have enhanced the efficiency of city staff. Congratulations to all. Thank you very much.
You knew you'd get an award for this. This is pretty big. Well done, Dick. Well done. Okay. Next, we are going to have an update on our body-worn camera policy from our police department. We have Chief Soroka and Chris Vance, Lieutenant.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of the presentation is to provide you with an update on our planned body-worn camera program, along with a timeline for its implementation. Some of the benefits of these programs are that they can be used to resolve citizen complaints, train officers on proper procedures when needed, document police and citizen behavior, and they can be used as evidence in criminal proceedings as well as civil litigation. In addition to these benefits, the research suggests that the mere presence of these cameras may serve to prevent negative interactions by modifying both officer and citizen behavior during their interactions. As a result, the use of these cameras may lead to enhanced police-community relations. The presentation will cover policy considerations, strategy of deployment, camera selection, timeline of deployment, and the cost of the cameras. We currently have a 10-page draft policy that includes the best practices recommendations from the Maryland Police Training Commission, International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Police Executive Research Forum, the ACLU, the Civil Rights Principles on Body-Worn Cameras, the Montgomery County Police Policy, as well as we've also obtained GPD officers' input. In addition, a meeting will be scheduled in the next month to get feedback from city residents relative to our planned program, as well as getting input from the members of the Police Advisory Committee. Once the policy is finalized and deemed legally sufficient by the city attorney, it will then be posted on our city website along with all of the other departmental policies and procedures of the police department. The policy includes provisions for when the cameras can be turned on, turned off, the prohibited use of the cameras, reporting and documenting its use, who can access and review the video under specified circumstances, the video retention period, and that the video will be released in accordance with the Maryland Public Information Act. Lieutenant Chris Vance will discuss the strategy of deployment.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Chris?
We intend to issue cameras to every single officer in the department, regardless of their assignment. Due to the Maryland wiretap law exemptions for body cameras, we can only deploy it in the field to officers that are uniformed in operational capacity, training, traffic unit, patrol officers, situations like that. We are deploying it to every officer, so if they have to, at sudden notice, go out on the street in uniform capacity, details, crisis emergencies, they will be equipped with the camera and be able to go out there. We plan to, our deployment strategy is going to be starting sometime in November of 2017 when we're actually going to start implementing it on the street. We're going to do a gradual deployment, one shift at a time, so that we can assess how the process is going, troubleshoot any issues going, rather than just doing a full-blown deployment department-wide. We are also researching automatic activation features, such as when your taser automatically turns on, your lights, emergency lights in the car, and there's potential for holster activations as well. Although these features are very desirable, there are some pros and cons and unintended consequences. We're trying to work through some inherent privacy issues with officers in the station and with accidental activations there. Once we resolve these issues, we do plan on using these features at some point in the future. Camera selection, we have selected through evaluation of the last couple of years, the Axon Body 2 cameras. This is the same body camera system that Montgomery County is currently using. It includes hardware, user licenses, and stores the data on the cloud system, and it's unlimited data. So it's very reliable, cost predicting in the future. It also includes CAD integration, which is a key component and makes it the best interest for us to use. CAD integration, the CAD is the computer-aided dispatch system through Montgomery County. It will pull data from that system and automatically integrate it into each video, such as information such as location, case number, car number, incident number, which makes the management of what we expect to be tens of thousands of videos a year very manageable. Without this feature, it would be undaunting on how we would do that. So it's a very key feature. It also allows us to do a seamless transfer of evidence to the state's attorney's office, who will plug into our account and pull that video very efficiently. Our timeline of deployment. We are currently finalizing the body-worn camera policy. All that's remaining is we're soliciting feedback from stakeholders, internal and external, to the department. We expect to finalize that by August of 2017. Between July and August of 2017, we expect to finalize the contract with Axon, which we're currently in the negotiations with. Starting in June this month, we're going to start preparing the infrastructure for the deployment, wire the station for downloading, purchase and install equipment when that's approved, and then we plan on training every single officer prior to deploying the cameras to the street. And again, we plan on start deploying in November 2017, one shift at a time, so we can troubleshoot any issues, but we fully expect that to be complete well before the end of FY 2018. Cost. Right now, we are in contract negotiations with Axon, so it's very fluid at this point. There was a state of Maryland Department of IT RFP that was issued in 2016, which was awarded to Axon for body cameras. So we're using that as a starting point for our negotiations. We're continuing to negotiate with Axon, and one benefit with the Axon contract is it'll be very predictable budgetary implications for the course of the contract. Every year we will know exactly how much we're going to spend because of unlimited data that it provides. The system will provide hardware setup, cameras, docking stations, mounts, Axon signals, professional assistance for the first year, and then software, cloud storage, redaction tools. There's tools which will enable us to audit, make sure officers are using the cameras as it's desired to. And then again, with the contract, it will be very predictable going forward. We'll know exactly how much we'll be spending on body cameras every year. Any questions?
Just a couple of comments. I just want to thank you guys for really taking this through a thoughtful, deliberate process. And I can tell from having heard this presentation, having read the draft policy, I can see how best practices have been incorporated, and it's really well thought out so far as I can tell. And so I just want to commend you on your work. Any comments or questions?
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with Judd. I know the chief and staff have been working on this diligently since we did the trial as a training tool. So I know that we probably have a pretty good idea of how effective it is and how reliable it's going to be. So just a couple questions. You talked about wiring the station for this. Is this going to be a separate network from the IT system that we have now in the city or at the station? Or
We're working with IT to figure out. They'll advise us on which type of separate. Montgomery County does use a subnetwork for their downloads. We're reviewing that to see if that's needed in our situation.
Okay. And the other question I had was about costs, is you didn't mention any additional personnel to manage the system and keep it up, keep it going. Is there going to be additional personnel?
We hired one last fiscal year, a police system support manager, who has been, for all intent purposes, is our body-worn camera program manager. So that person's already been hired.
Okay. And I guess there'll be a backup in the staff?
Yes.
Okay.
We already have that.
Great. Well, I think that our community can be confident that we'll do this right, just the way we've managed to do everything else. So compliments to the preparation here.
I think I'll echo what's been said. There's obviously a lot of policy and legal minefields involved in this. You all have approached it very deliberatively and professionally, and it's not the end of the process by any means, as your presentation shows. I think this is a good example of when we see a movement or a need coming up regionally, nationally, internationally, as technology evolves, as sensitivities evolve to communities, that we don't want to rush into the right solution, but we want to be deliberative and make sure that we're implementing a solution that's going to work and consider all of those things. So thank you for doing that, and I look forward to seeing this roll out. I'm sure we'll have additional questions and opportunities for input from the public and us as we proceed in the coming months. And I'm sure, our city attorney and others involved will be on the lookout for any potential changes at the state and federal level that might affect the plan that we've developed so far. So thank you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to echo the comments that were made. It's kudos to you in this process. It's been very deliberative. One question that I have is, I obviously support this, but I wanted to make sure that this is not something that we're forcing on the force itself. Can you give me a sense of the reaction of our officers to the
Yes.
rollout of this technology?
I've had many discussions with our officers. To be honest, probably 2 or 3 years ago, they were a little concerned about it, but they've seen the benefits of the body-worn camera system nationally and what it can do to help officers and help the community. So I think our officers there's a buy-in on it, and most of our officers, if not all, are supporting it and can't wait to wear it.
It's good to hear.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. We will move on. Next on our agenda is public comments. This is the time the mayor and council would like to hear from anybody who want to speak on any topic, because we have no public hearings tonight. We ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. State your name and address or neighborhood for the record. When your time is down to 30 seconds, the timer will beep and turn yellow. When it's up, it will beep and turn red. Please.
Hi, I'm Terry Cedrin. I'm at 15061 Joshua Tree Road in Gaithersburg. I'm here representing the dog park on Bickerstaff Way. First of all, we want to thank all of you for keeping the dog park, because it's a great place. There have been a couple of issues that we want to give you a heads up about. One, there's the issue of kids entering the dog park and leaving the gate open, and kids who are afraid of dogs they need water. They're thirsty because they're playing basketball in the parcel of land right next door. I would very much like to see these kids have access to a safe water fountain. I don't know whether other City of Gaithersburg parks have water fountains, but these kids could really use a water fountain, and then it would squelch the issue of dogs running out onto the road and then kids being exposed to hordes of dogs. Secondly, there have been an occasional lone male entering the dog park area, which is kind of creepy. I guess 2 years ago, the issue of having a combination lock came up, and at that time, all the dog park people poo-pooed it. Now that consensus has shifted a little bit, so we'd like you to consider putting a combination lock there. Okay, and then of course you can always, if there's the combination lock, you can always track any problem dogs, because we're guaranteed that people have registered their dogs with the city. And this seems like pie in the sky, but I'll bring it up anyway. The issue of a camera in the parking lot, because there's a lot of, or through the years, there have been burglaries or thefts. They they break the window and steal a pocketbook. Oh, that's the 30
30
second one.
seconds.
Okay, I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers this evening? Come on up, please. Either one of you.
Hi, my name is Amira Zachary, and I kind of just wanted to echo what Terry just said. I'm really in favor of having a camera in the parking lot because there have been several break-ins, and there was one last week. And about a month ago, there was an assault at the dog park that was pretty violent. And the man who committed the assault ran away, and no one got his license plate or anything. So I think it would really be beneficial to have a camera. And I guess in regards to the code as well, a lot of those kids do come in. I have 2 dogs who have personally run out on the streets because of the kids leaving the gate open. So just for the safety of the dogs and the kids and drivers as well, I think that would be very beneficial.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I just want, are you here to speak about the dog park as well? No, come on up. While you're coming up, I just want to note that if anything should happen crime-wise, it needs to be reported. All of our, not only our police patrol patterns determined by the number of calls, but same with the county as well. So it's really, really important that those things are reported. Yes, please.
Sure. Jake Stroman, 4912 Bolton Road, Bethesda, Maryland. Good evening and thank you, Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm Jake Stroman with Boston Properties. I'm here to speak about item 10E on tonight's agenda. By way of background, Boston Properties purchased the 29-acre tract of land known as Washingtonian North in 1998. At the time of our purchase, the planned office buildings were to be occupied by Manugistics. However, that deal fell apart, and Boston Properties began to market the site to other prospective office tenants. Fast forward to today, after completing 2 separate transactions with Lifetime Fitness in Camden as part of the Third Amendment to the annexation agreement, which was agreed to with the city in 2013. So why is the last remaining development site not able to attract an office tenant? And with all due respect to the staff and their analysis of the transaction, I strongly urge you to think about the data that they provided in their memorandums. If one were to rely on their data alone, you could argue that this site is ready for speculative office development. And as any development professional would attest, that's simply not the case. What they didn't provide in their memo from the CoStar report is that the Gaithersburg market is lumped into the North Rockville submarket, which alone has an 18.9% office vacancy rate. They provided examples of asking rents on a gross basis. Deducting operating expenses and real estate taxes provides the net income by which you can equate a development return. Let's take an example, the Summit at Washingtonian. It would likely cost about $400 a square foot to build that building today, inclusive of the land basis. The gross asking rent in the CoStar report is $27 a square foot. If you deduct $11 for operating expenses and real estate taxes, that leaves you with $16 a square foot. The resultant year 1 cash-on-cash return is 4%, and that assumes it doesn't take 2+ years to lease up. That deal is simply not financeable, and the development risk is too steep. As you are all well aware, the office market in the I-270 corridor suffers from an abundance of supply, both from existing, vacant or near vacant office buildings and planned development sites that are metro accessible. Simply put, current rental rates and the overabundance of supply makes new office development economically unfeasible. And as witnessed over the past 5 years, highly amenitized suburban submarkets that have access to mass transit have been the winners and will continue to be for the foreseeable future. The uphill battle only gets steeper with the recent adoption of the Bethesda downtown sector plan and the addition of 4 million square feet in that market makes this site a real challenge for us from an office perspective. We respectfully request your consideration of the proposed Fourth Amendment to the annexation agreement whereby a senior housing project could be developed on this site.
Jake, is this the last sentence?
Yep.
Okay, please.
In lieu of the previously approved office.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any other speakers? Please.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Scott Wallace with the law firm of Lanoes and Blocker, 7200 Wisconsin Avenue, Bethesda, Maryland. I'm speaking here tonight on behalf of Boston Properties and SHA Capital Partners on agenda item number 10E, which will be before you later tonight. SHA and Boston are requesting a Fourth Amendment to the Washingtonian Annexation Agreement to allow a senior housing project to be developed on Lot 9 in Washingtonian North instead of the office building currently approved for the site. This project will help meet a significant and growing need for quality senior housing in Gaithersburg, including the need for affordable units. In addition to the benefits of serving an important constituency in a vibrant, active, and engaging setting, we have provided the Mayor and Council with an analysis prepared by Sage Policy Group that demonstrates the economic benefits of the project, including jobs and significant tax revenue for the city and county. Further, as shown in the multiple letters you have received, the senior housing project has the support of the owners of the commercial centers at Crown and Rio, the adjacent Shady Grove Village townhouse community, the owner of the Summit office building and adjacent vacant office site in Washingtonian Center, and the owner of the multifamily apartment building currently under construction in Washingtonian North. These parties cite a range of benefits from the project, including an increased customer base for the businesses at Crown and Rio, less traffic as compared to an office use, and the completion of the vacant lot in Washingtonian North in the near term. The supporters of the project see the advantages of developing this site with senior housing instead of an office building, given the current and expected long-term market and economic conditions that were described by Mr. Stroman. In this regard, it is important for the Council to remember that the annexation agreement is a flexible tool for the city to use to address changes in economic and market conditions and facilitate development opportunities that benefit the city under such terms and conditions that the city and the property owner agreed to in the negotiation of the agreement. In fact, this annexation agreement has been amended 3 times since it was initially approved in 1991. Most recently, the Third Amendment was approved in 2014 to allow for the development of the Lifetime Fitness Facility and the Camden Apartments on the site. Prior amendments changed the uses from those approved in the original annexation agreement to provide the current mix of uses that have allowed the Washingtonian to develop into a very successful commercial and residential center in the city. This success was accomplished in part by the city's willingness to agree to changes to the original vision for Washingtonian. Such changes are to be expected as a long-term, multi-phased project like Washingtonian builds out over the course of many years. So we ask you to view the request for this Fourth Amendment in this context, being flexible in the land use decisions you make and carefully considering an exceptional opportunity to bring an important housing resource to the city. We would be happy to answer any questions or discuss this further when you get to this item later tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Any other, please, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor, distinguished council members. I'm Doug Cooper, partner in SHA Capital Partners and contract purchaser of 10,100 Washingtonian Boulevard. The coming wave of seniors is often referred to as the silver tsunami. This metaphor is both appropriate and alarming. Seniors are the fastest growing segment of our population. There is approximately 75 million baby boomers that will be 65 by 2030, the full 75 million. This has a huge impact on our demographics for the next 20 years. The reason is very simple. In Maryland, I'm going to boil this down. In Maryland, that means there will be approximately 500,000 more seniors. In Montgomery County, over 100,000 more seniors. And even in Gaithersburg, the senior population will probably double in size from currently 7,000 today to about 15,000 seniors by 2030. But where will baby boomers live where will they choose to live? Most will either choose to live near their children and grandchildren, or they'll prefer to stay in their own community where they've planted deep roots, where they've raised a family, bought a house, worshiped, gone to school, developed relationships with doctors, maybe even serve the public. We believe boomers will choose to live in these communities that are heavily amenitized, that offer a great number of resources both inside and outside that senior housing community. However, currently, there's only about 1,500 units in the city of Gaithersburg. About 80% of those units are in one project, the Asbury Methodist, CCRC. All the projects are essentially at full capacity, and they often have wait lists. To satisfy demand, I can envision the city needing another 1,500 units of senior housing by 2030. The City Council has an opportunity to be proactive. You can implement a plan for senior housing. You can embrace our vision of providing best-in-class senior housing that will provide an environment that seniors will choose to live in. While we are not a CCRC, which requires large upfront entry fees, we do offer a continuum of care at 100% rental on a rental basis. Our project will offer independent assisted and memory care living options and have several dining options, an exercise room. Can I just complete that sentence?
Go ahead.
A walking path and a robust daily activity program.
Thank you.
To encourage socialization.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers? Okay. I would like to invite, getting back to the dog park, I'd like to invite Michelle Potter. Terry, if you guys could hold on just a minute, I'm bringing Michelle up so she can give us an update on where we stand on the dog park.
Thank you very much. So staff met this morning on the proposals that were submitted for the dog park, and staff included representatives from Planning and Code Administration, Parks, Recreation and Culture, Public Works, and Police. Officer Dan Lane was in attendance. So we're currently exploring options and we'll be preparing a response. So that's where we are.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks very much, guys. All right, so we're moving on to from the mayor and council, and I am going to sort of break protocol a little bit and start off with a statement about the Paris Climate Accord, which is something I wouldn't necessarily have anticipated speaking about at a city meeting, but here we are. And then I'm going to open it up. We'll go around the dais for everyone to say whatever they want to talk about, and I'll open it up if anybody wants to comment about this issue or not. They're welcome to. So as you all know, last week President Trump announced his intention to pull the United States out of the Paris Accord on climate. Since that moment, we have received numerous calls from the public to sign on to various mayors and municipal pledges to uphold the terms of the Paris Agreement at the local level. I entirely understand the frustration with the president's decision here and other decisions that have been made at the federal level over the last few months. I personally share that frustration. Frankly, all of us feel strongly about the environment and doing the very best we can to reduce our impact for future generations. You can see that in the legislation and policy that we've enacted over the last decade plus. My colleague Ryan had a great post on Facebook earlier today, which I shared, that laid out the highlights of what we've done as a city over that time span. In addition to Ryan's list, I'll note that by far the largest capital budget initiative we've embarked on since any of us have been elected is our stormwater program, the whole point of which is to remediate and reduce our impact on the environment. My colleague Mike served in leadership on the National League of Cities on environmental matters for a number of years. This is near and dear to our hearts. It's what we do. We've put our money, our time, our effort where our mouth is, and we've done some outstanding work here in Gaithersburg. We have been an absolute national leader. So we're all on board here and on the leading edge of environmentally friendly policy making, and even when no one's looking. And we're all disturbed by the prospect of the administration stepping back from an important commitment. And now we have the question as to whether to sign on to one of these mayor's or municipal commitments. Given everything I've just said, the question might be, well, why not jump on board and sign on to one of them? And there's a couple of issues that sort of give me pause, and I'm going to pose these questions, and people can speak to them as they'd like. Number one, I I don't want to sign on to something simply to appease the public with no intention of complying. That's not who I am, and that's not who we are. So before signing on to any agreement, I'd want to fully understand the fine print. I'd want to understand, do we as a city have the authority to enforce greenhouse gas emissions within our borders? And do we have the resources with which to measure those emissions? And what sort of burden would we be putting on our staff with signing one of these documents? And what are the long-term budget implications? If we were to do it and other neighboring jurisdictions did not, would we be putting ourselves at a competitive disadvantage? Obviously, the big advantage of doing something at the federal level is that it applies to everybody equally, and that's certainly different from adopting things locally where your neighbors may or may not be on the same page. The point here is that I don't like to make hasty decisions on behalf of our residents based on strong, legitimate but strong emotion. I don't feel it's the best way to govern. Frankly, I save all of my rash decisions from my personal life. I'd want it to make sense specifically for Gaithersburg and within the context of our other ongoing initiatives, many of which have put us at the forefront of municipalities in the nation. So that's point number one. Point number two is, as tempting as it often is, I'm reluctant to use the voice of the city to comment on federal issues, especially partisan matters. I see it as a Pandora's box. We do play an advocacy role with the county, state, and federal governments. We play this role all the time, but we have historically limited the scope to legislative and budgetary initiatives that promise a particular impact on Gaithersburg and Gaithersburg's interests. So while one can sort of make that statement about the goal to reduce global temperatures, it's much broader than what we typically assert ourselves on at the federal level. So if we're going to sign on to anything, I'd want it to be by and large because it's the right thing for our community, and less as an assertion of our frustration with the administration. So for those two reasons, I'm a bit reticent. I don't necessarily agree that we need to sign on it to anything in order to do our part and be responsible. But if it's the consensus of my colleagues, I want to have, before moving forward, I want to have some satisfactory answers to those questions about our ability to comply and carry forward. As we go around the dais, as I said, I'm interested to hear from everybody, but I will note from my first day here as a city council member to now, I'm as committed as any public servant, any mayor in the United States of America to our environment and reducing our footprint. This hasn't changed. It's not going to change. Whether anybody's looking or not, this is what we do, whether there's a hot political issue going on or not. And I'm confident that regardless where we end up on any particular document or agreement, our collective commitment will remain as strong as ever. So that's where I am, and I wanted to move over to Councilmember Spiegel.
Thanks for throwing that football over to me, Mr. Mayor. Well, I will follow up on the mayor's statement, and I will note, as he did, that I made some social media posts earlier today, which I won't read in full here. Some of them were lengthy, and you all can check them out. They're publicly available. To be clear, and speaking only for myself personally, I find the president's withdrawal from the Paris Agreement to be nothing short of an appalling disaster and a total abdication of American leadership on one of, if not the most important issues of our time. And Mr. Mayor, you said that we don't want to wade into national partisan debates, but frankly, this shouldn't be a partisan matter. It's a matter of science. And indeed, I do believe that we probably should and will sign on to one or more of the various efforts that have gained traction in recent days. In fact, I was the first to raise the suggestion with the mayor and council by email a few days ago, as we were starting to see more and more reports of municipalities, cities around the country, business groups, states, and others sort of taking up the mantle of this issue. But I also, like you, Mr. Mayor, don't see the need to rush through this process of studying the various statements and agreements that have surfaced, considering the impact of joining each of those, and making a thoughtful decision over the coming weeks. For example, and as you noted, Mr. Mayor, there are a number of questions here about enforcement and measurement. Does a particular coalition that's out there commit us to do things that may be too difficult or even impossible down the road? And by signing on, do we undermine our own credibility on the issue? Should we sign on to one statement or several? And which ones? Groups have surfaced, including the U.S. Climate Alliance, the so-called Climate Mayors Group. The World Wildlife Fund is circulating a letter for people to sign on to. The National League of Cities, of which we're a member, has been making statements. And given our history of very strong environmental leadership, which the mayor referenced and which I talked more about in my social media posts, I think a modest delay to consider what's out there is not unreasonable. Really, no one should be able to credibly challenge our commitment and our record of accomplishments as a city on this issue. I have long felt and said that local governments really are the new battlefront in the climate change saga. I'm glad to see many are already on board. I'm glad to see some other municipalities and businesses getting on board this week around the country. But we've been on board and we've been leading that ship for a long time on many, many fronts. So as far as I can tell, the only reason to rush to sign on immediately or tonight is to take advantage of the moment and the headlines. But Gaithersburg has been less interested in scoring quick political points than in doing the right thing, and doing it consistently and continually over time to make that difference with our actions, not just with our words as we sign on to statements. And we'll continue to focus first on that. So again, I don't see a need to rush into this tonight before our staff and our council has had a little more time to evaluate the options and the groups that are out there. But I do think they pose a good opportunity, once we have evaluated those options, to probably sign on to one or more of those groups and their statements. So that's where I am. And I hope I've at least made my position clear. And I'm happy to have a further discussion with you, Mr. Mayor, and the rest of the council on this, and further engagement from the public on this question.
Did you have anything else?
Yeah, so are we also going through
just
all of our
go-
other,
let's
I
go
have a lot of
through
other things too. So in other news from the mayor and council tonight,
Maybe we should bifurcate.
you think we should buy for, well, it's up to the
No,
mayor.
let's go.
So, okay, so.
No, go ahead.
So a few items, a few events that have occurred since our last formal meeting that I did want to mention. We've already spoken about the book festival at our last work session, so I won't belabor the point there. But we did also have our monthly meeting of the Montgomery County chapter of the Maryland Municipal League, where we had our annual elections and elected a new a set of officers and executive board. So I will be officially cycling out of my role as president of the Montgomery County chapter of MML after having served 2 years in that post. I thought it was time to give someone else an opportunity. However, I will be staying on as the county's representative to the statewide board of the Maryland Municipal League. And I want to congratulate all the new officers and exec board members who were elected, and I wish them luck, and we stand ready to help them. And I also want to congratulate all of the board members and committee chairs and members from the chapter and other volunteers from the chapter who've been involved over the course of the last year and previous years for all their good work. Our chapter is recognized, not only is MML as an organization recognized in Annapolis, but I think our chapter is recognized in Annapolis as having a good amount of influence over important legislation that affects cities and towns in Montgomery County, including, of course, Gaithersburg. And I think we've been pretty successful, and I think we'll continue to be that.
And thank you for your service.
My pleasure. I was also able to attend on May 25th a couple of bill signings with the governor. Monica and I went down to Annapolis and observed as the governor signed a couple of important bills for the Municipal League and for Gaithersburg, one of which was to extend to municipalities the authority to go after fraud by government contractors. A law was passed a couple years ago, a state version of the False Claims Act, for those who are familiar with the federal False Claims Act, that allows the state and counties to do that, but it didn't include municipalities, so we drafted a law to make sure that it also included municipalities. The governor signed that. He also signed what's the so-called municipal tax forgiveness bill. I don't like to use the word forgiveness, but this is the bill that saves millions of dollars for the city of Gaithersburg after the comptroller's office made some calculation errors and apparently overpaid us and then sought to have us reimburse them. This bill signed by the governor essentially holds municipalities harmless so that we don't have to pay back for the mistake of the comptroller's office. So that's real savings, real millions of dollars in savings for the city of Gaithersburg as well as for many other cities and towns. So we were able to witness that. Over the last week, I want to congratulate the Rotary Club for doing a wonderful job with the Flags for Our Heroes display at Borer Park. For those who had a chance to see it, it's a beautiful thing every Memorial Day weekend. I want to congratulate and thank all of those who were involved in the Memorial Day ceremony that the city conducted on Tuesday of last week, the actual official Memorial Day, from the volunteers to the vets who showed up and the school children to all of the staff and others, other groups, VFW and other groups, Daughters of the American Revolution, who were involved in organizing a very, very moving and meaningful Memorial Day ceremony. I was excited to join many of my colleagues up here for the groundbreaking of the new Park Plaza in Old Town Gaithersburg, project which is now getting underway and will take about, 6 months? 6 months to build? So that's very exciting.
About 6 months. I'm seeing a nodding head.
6 months, yes, 6 months to build. So before long, we'll be able to see the fruits of that effort and hopefully a real good piece of the reinvigoration of Old Town. Also was able to attend the volunteer city coaches celebration and picnic, thanking all the coaches. Thanks to Michelle and all the folks at the water park and all the folks involved in recreation who organized that great event. The weather was perfect, so thank you for organizing the weather. And getting a chance to really say thank you to the hundreds of coaches who volunteer thousands and thousands of hours. I don't remember the exact number, but I know Michelle posted it on social media to make our rec programs really wonderful. And then this morning, Monica and I attended the annual meeting of the Committee for Montgomery, which is a great organization that brings together nonprofits, labor, business, developers, civic associations, education, academic institutions, government, brings them all together to advocate for the top few priorities for all of Montgomery County. It's a really unique organization in that it brings together all these different groups that are sometimes not on the same side of issues. And we heard from Congressman Jamie Raskin, who gave a good presentation about what's going on in Washington, D.C., and reminded us how lucky we are to be in local government where we can be effective. And then I did finally also want to mention a local high schooler, Michaela Brick. Many of us know her mother, Krista, who's been involved in the community. Michaela came to me some months back saying that she was interested in doing something with her art and her painting and also helping the homeless. And so I connected her with our community services staff and suggested they take a look at our Seneca Heights partnership in Gaithersburg, and she hosted an art gallery show at Seneca Heights for the formerly homeless residents of that program, where they were able to actually look at, shop around for, and pick pieces of art for them to put into their apartments at Seneca Heights, which was a really nice way to sort of give back to the community and use her skills. And so that was this past Saturday, and I just want to congratulate her on her efforts from start to finish making that happen as a high schooler. That was really a cool thing to do. So I'm sorry I had a lot to say, but that's it for me tonight. Thank you.
All right, Neil.
Thanks, Ryan, for those brief remarks. Is it still Monday? All right. Anyway, I'll keep it short. First of all, I had a chance to attend again the Flags for Our Heroes event. It's really quite moving. The flag display is very beautiful. Despite the rainy weather, I thought we had a nice turnout, and I look forward to future iterations of the event. A really good fundraiser by the local Rotary Club for a number of great causes. Regarding the the issue of pulling out of the Paris Accord, as everyone has stated, it's quite dismaying to see that the president has taken this action. One of the things that we're supposed to do here as elected officials is be stewards of our city. And, we want to have a planet here for our children and our grandchildren. And I think this is, all the evidence points in the same direction, and being suspicious of scientists whose motivation is primarily to dig out the truth, I think is very, very unfortunate trend that we have, that we've politicized this sort of thing. So, while the points that Mayor Ashman and Councilman Spiegel have mentioned in terms of, making, signing on to something that's difficult to comply with, since we're not in charge of the American economy or let alone the world economy, I've also expressed myself in the past as being someone that's not really very excited about making empty gestures and statements of support for things that aren't under our control. This one's kind of a biggie, and so I hope that in the very near term we look into the various options that are available to us and make sure that we get on the side of the angels on this one. All right, I'll keep it brief since everyone else didn't. Thanks.
Okay, Yvette.
Thank you. So I, too, agree with my colleagues concerning the Paris climate. And just want to say I don't want to rush into the process as well. And I look forward to making, because we're a committed city to our environment, I look forward to making a thoughtful decision concerning all of us and what will come down the line for this. Just a couple of things. I went to most of the things that everyone else spoke about in terms of events around the city. I did attend the Gospel Jubilee on Saturday, which was very well attended, and it was a lot of fun. It was perfect weather. And I also want to say congratulations to a couple of our high schools, Gaithersburg and QO graduates, who have already graduated, turned that tassel on the other side, and so we want to send congratulations to all of them and look forward to hearing about what you're doing in your future and doing great things here in our city. I also want to just say a couple thank yous to Park and Rec. I met with them a couple weeks ago and they were lovely. I went on a 3-hour tour with Trudy of our entire city. It was absolutely fascinating. I can't even, you should do it for everybody. Like, this is really a wonderful thing. And I met today with our senior advisory committee, and they were a wonderful group of people, and I was excited to sit down and chat with them. So I have an announcement. Boards, commissions, and committee vacancies. The mayor and city council are seeking members to serve on a number of city boards, commissions, and committees. Joining is a way to get involved and help your community. The following have vacancies: Animal Control Board, 1 alternate public at large, and 1 alternate representative of the Montgomery County Veteran Medical Association, or someone who has training and/or experience in the proper training or care of animals. And that's open until filled. The Board of Appeals, 1 alternate, open until filled. The Community Advisory Committee, the Education Enrichment Committee, the Multicultural Affairs Committee, the Police Advisory Committee, the Senior Advisory Committee, and the Transportation Committee. If you're interested in serving on any of the above, please send a letter of interest and resume to Mayor and City Council, 31 Summit Avenue, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20877, or via email to cityhall@gaithersburgmd.gov. For more information and official announcements, please visit our city website at www.gaithersburgmd.gov or contact the city manager's office at 301-258-6310.
Thank you. Mike.
Okay, let me read an announcement. First, a closed meeting was held at City Hall by the Mayor and City Council on Monday, May 22nd, 2017, at approximately 10:10 p.m. pursuant to a motion adopted unanimously. The meeting was proposed to be closed pursuant to the general provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, Section 3-305B8 to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation. The topic discussed was the Public Service Commission. Present at the meeting were Mayor Ashman, council members Harris, Monroe, Spiegel, Sesma, and Wu. City staff present were City Attorney Ford, City Manager Tomasello, Deputy City Manager Enslinger, Assistant City Attorney Johnson, and outside counsel Joe Van Eaton. Upon conclusion of the discussion, the closed meeting was adjourned at approximately 10:25 p.m. So I also participated in many of the events that have already been announced, but I actually don't remember being so effusive in praise about the Gaithersburg Book Festival, which was held 2 weeks ago on Saturday. So I want to thank all of those who attended, over 20,000, probably over 22,000, something like that. All right, thank all of our sponsors who we couldn't do this event without, and most importantly, our volunteers who we absolutely couldn't do it without. And then finally, the authors, which it would be really a boring thing if we didn't have the authors there to tell us about their books and what they do to write their books and to meet with the people who are coming to hear about them. So it was a great success, the 8th annual, so I'm looking forward to the 9th annual. So thank you again, everybody. In terms of congratulations to those who have graduated from high school and looking forward to the summer and then the fall. We have several high schools that Gaithersburg residents attend. Tomorrow afternoon, Northwest High School graduates as well. So we've already had Gaithersburg and Quince Orchard. I don't know when Watkins Mill graduates. So on the topic of the moment, the Paris Climate Accord. So I've had a few posts on Facebook as well, social media, and I've said, basically, I led each of those posts saying, we've been doing this for a long time. So I went back and looked, and in 2006, the council and the mayor, then Sidney Katz, and I believe I am the only person left from that sitting council that's still here. We approved a resolution to join 307 cities nationwide, representing over 50 million Americans, in signing the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. And we actually held that signing at the Robertson Park Youth Center, which was at the time the only green building in the city, but it was a LEED certified green building. So what did that mean? What did that obligate us to do? So the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement was an initiative spearheaded by Seattle Mayor at the time, Greg Nichols, that was unanimously endorsed by the U.S. Conference of Mayors in June 2005. And it encouraged state and local governments to take actions to reduce greenhouse emissions, which is a big part of the Paris Climate Agreement. By signing this commitment, Gaithersburg pledged to think globally and act locally by striving to meet or exceed key protocol targets for reducing global warming pollution and urging Congress to pass climate protection legislation. Now, in 2006, we were still talking about global warming, and Henry and I would actually have a lot of arguments up here about the science, and I kept telling Henry he was wrong, and I think eventually he agreed with me. Anyway, so what else did that mean we were going to do? Well, the initiatives that were already in place in Gaithersburg included our municipal green building ordinance, in which we had built the Robertson Park Youth Center, which was a green building, and then had committed to build a youth center in Old Town, which became the first platinum public building in the state of Maryland, LEED platinum public building in the state of Maryland, and I believe is the only youth center in the United States that has that rating. So the city also promoted the use of wind energy through the purchase of renewable energy credits, and its urban forestry program earned it a Tree City USA designation every year since 1989. And the city's equipment fleet began using B20 biodiesel fuel. The city also began to examine other projects aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, including conducting a greenhouse gas emission inventory, which we are still doing, and implementing energy efficiency improvements in new and existing city operations and buildings, greening the city's vehicle fleet, and incorporating more hybrids and electric vehicles, and pursuing other clean alternative energy options for the city. We found that in the long run that ended up saving us money, and it will continue to save us money. And in fact, there was a lot of debate on the dais when we began talking about the green building ordinance and the requirements for not only for the city's buildings to be built to green standards, but also for any other building that was approved for construction in the city, within the city limits, to also adopt those, comply with those standards. There were some concerns that a number of representatives of the development community would stand up and protest that and actually fight it. It turned out, though, that most of the developers that did come to talk to the council at that time actually endorsed it. And what they had learned as Washington, D.C. had begun to adopt these policies is that companies that wanted to find a brand new building to move into to conduct their business, or people who want to live in apartment buildings or multifamily or a condo, actually began looking for buildings that were highly energy efficient, that had LEED ratings. So we had no opposition to that at all. So we've been doing this for a long time, and many of the things that we committed to do in 2006 are incorporated in the Paris Climate Agreement. But now, Judd has mentioned some misgivings about whether or not we should act on federal issues as a city, and I believe that at some point we should be thinking about that. And so the National League of Cities, of which I've represented the city for quite a long time, has published an article that explains 5 key facts that city leaders should know about the president's decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement and its ramifications. The first is that America's cities are already feeling the effects of climate change. Global climate change is not just a threat on the horizon, the reality is already here. I think there are plenty of examples of extreme weather events like heat waves, hurricanes, droughts, blizzards that are happening with greater frequency and intensity. Catastrophic flooding events, nuisance flooding problems have increased nationwide, hitting coastal communities such as Norfolk, Virginia, Annapolis, Maryland, and Honolulu, Hawaii, and Miami, Florida. There's rising temperatures spelling dangers for cities like Salt Lake City and Denver, where heat waves and reduced snowfall have contributed to drought conditions and high fire danger. City leaders will continue to be on the front lines of these issues. When climate change related disasters strike.
You're gonna read the whole.
I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read okay. City leaders, we're the first responders to this. If there's a pothole in front of your house, you don't call the federal government, you call City Hall. If the water is bad, if the water quality is bad, you're going to call City Hall. If there are power outages, you're going to call City Hall to say, why don't you do something with Pepco or Exelon? Climate action can create jobs and boost local economies. So contrary to President's statements regarding climate accord, the initiatives have proven to be economic drivers for many years. And in fact, the renewable energy industry probably surpasses any, in terms of total jobs and contributing to the economy, jobs related to coal production. Local environmental progress will be more difficult without a federal partner. I think that's obvious. And then finally, cities are going to have to stand together and join with some unlikely partners. And some of those happen to be heavy industry that have been contributors to these problems as well. So in March at the National League of Cities meeting in Washington, D.C., I was one of 70 city leaders that signed on to the NLC's climate action letter, which we sent to President Trump. More have signed on since. And then last week, the NLC released its State of the Cities report that analyzed the state of the city speeches from over 120 cities, in which a number of those mayors addressed these particular issues. So I think that we're already in the mix. I agree that we don't need to be rash about it. We need to be methodical and systematic, and we'll find that many of the things that the climate action or the climate agreement have called for nations to do are already happening at a state and local level, and we're a big part of that. So I'm not concerned whether or not we sign this particular climate agreement, sign on to it. I believe that we will find an agreement or a statement or a policy in which we will be able to act. I believe there will be unanimity among the council and the mayor on this particular issue. I agree, I don't see the need to rush into it without careful study looking at the impact of these these issues and these policies on our own local economy and on our own government of the city, but also on interactions with the state, our other municipal neighbors, and with the federal government. So that's where I am. We've been doing this for a long time. We're going to continue doing it, and we'll find a way to do it systematically so that we can continue to be a leader in addressing issues regarding sustainability, climate protection, and environmentalism in the state of Maryland, and also in the United States.
Thank you, Mike. Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Announcements. Council and the communities. Notice to the general public is hereby given that the Gaithersburg Mayor and City Council plan to conduct a Council and the Communities meeting on Wednesday, June 14th, 2017 at 7 p.m. at Gaithersburg High School Cafeteria. It's located at 101 Education Boulevard, Gaithersburg, Maryland. The meeting is being held for the following neighborhoods, condominiums, and apartment complexes. Although you're not limited to that, anyone can attend. Neighborhoods are Asbury, Chestnut, Meme Historic Area, Deer Park, Russell Brooks, and Walker Historic Area. The condominiums are Russell Avenue, Summit Crossing. Apartments are Brooks Manor, Gaither House, Cedar Courts, Dalamar, Diamond Station, Diamond TAK, Free State, Lakeside, Lanigan, Montgomery Park, the Oaks at Old Town, Park Station, Whetstone, Young, 214 Brooks Avenue, 425 North Frederick Avenue, and 439 North Frederick Avenue. Please contact Neighborhood Services Division Chief Kevin Roman at 240-805-1042 for more information, or if you need accessibility accommodations. So before jumping to the Paris Accord discussion that we've been having here, I just wanted to bring up a matter that I would like the council to consider. As a little bit of background, I had raised to the council in private discussions the possibility of evaluating the possibility of acquiring certain green space within the Old Town area, specifically on Walker Avenue. I'm a proponent of green space, parks, providing those amenities for residents, as I know everyone on here, the council, is through my conversations with them and actually through our actions and deeds with the public. I felt that the conversation on this particular piece was cut short, and for whatever reason it was. But going forward, what I'd like to do is talk about how the city systematically would look to evaluating the acquisition of green space, park space, open space, which I know our residents value, which we value, and in fact is 3 of the objectives that are stated in our strategic plan, which we'll be discussing later here today. So I'm not necessarily looking for commitments or anything, perhaps opinions, but what I'm really looking for is a process going forward where we take a proactive approach to identify opportunities to acquire green space, open space, and park space, particularly in those areas of the city that aren't serviced as much by the amenities. As you know, certain of the master plan communities do have more access to these types of amenities than the more established areas of the city. I'm not saying that would be a criteria, but something we would look to. So just wanted to raise that point and throw it out there.
I'll speak to it, and then if anybody else wants to jump in, they can. Otherwise, you can go on, Rob. But I think it's a legitimate point. It is a part of our strategic It is a strategic direction for us. Generally, in the past, staff has usually driven a process of acquiring new property for whatever reason, or it's been the result of a proffer from somebody doing business with the city. But I think it's a totally legitimate question to say, well, what if one of the members of the council or a member of the public sees an opportunity that maybe staff doesn't see first? And I think it's, Rob came to one of our staff members to ask for feedback and background or consideration, and I think that was fine. Tony, how would you want that to proceed?
I think the acquisition of property has occurred on an ad hoc basis almost annually. Often it's been for economic development or other purposes. But, it is a stated goal of the city to accumulate park property in a ratio that's acceptable to the residents. We do keep funding in the CIP for property acquisition. If you guys would like us to present, more formalized kind of flow chart of how we would accelerate such a purchase, it still would be up to you, since clearly it's going to be over any sort of spending authority of staff.
Right.
We're happy to do that.
Okay. I don't know that we necessarily need to get a flow chart together. Rob, what do you think?
I don't know.
Maybe
Neil's the chart guy, so we'll.
There's certain criteria for prioritizing what we would buy. We wouldn't buy a park next to another park. That would be
right.
Not recommended.
Well, you need a park for the park. No, I think what I'd like to see is some data, a map showing kind of per capita green space. If there's some way to do an analysis of where it might be less available to residents.
Didn't we have this plugged into GIS?
We have a proximity map.
Yeah.
How many people are within quarter of a mile from green space of some sort, but green space has various levels of
It's public
green
space.
space,
Yeah.
various levels of amenities.
Right.
So, and we do have a park map as well, so we should probably forward those to you guys too.
And probably take a look at those and see if there's spaces where, the coverage is less optimal than other places, or whether there's fewer. I mean, it's not just, how far you have to go to get to a green space, but how much green space is there when you get there. There's a big difference between a national park and, a pocket park, right?
Right.
So.
Quite a big difference.
Right. And then there's also
Maybe not for long, but yeah.
There's also differences in communities in
Right.
terms of the private green spaces available to people. If we look at some lots that, in some parts of the city and older subdivisions or communities and neighborhoods, the lots are, 100 feet by 250 feet. And the house on that lot occupies maybe 25% of that property, the rest of it's green. If we look at, our new urbanist communities, we're looking at zero lot lines with very small amounts of private green space, but there are large common areas in which people can share. So I think the strategy and the whole design of these of pocket parks and things like that calls for a difference calls for a regard of the difference in neighborhoods in terms of what the private property as well as what the public amenities might be. So I think we have to look at those things as well, and I think that's been our strategy in the past.
Yeah, and there's also the outreach angle, very similar to the parking permit program. Do people in a specific area want a public space amongst their houses? In the older neighborhoods, it tends to be a vacant lot or something like that that's amongst some other houses. So what you would want us to do about determining whether the neighborhood wants one, and would it be passive? Would it be a skate spot? Would it have lights? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my point is to raise the issue so that we are looking for these opportunities. And as Neil said, an analytical approach is a good approach. I'm not sure, that's kind of what I read from what you said.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I thought our staff had always been looking for those opportunities, so I wasn't sure why we needed to.
And look, on the other hand, looking at the Parks and Rec Department budget and this number of parks in the city, it's not like we seem to have a great lack of public green space that is owned and operated by the city. So, it hasn't really come up before because it hasn't felt that urgent. I mean, everybody wants to have green space. We've got the new Consumer Product Safety Commission park going in the Park Plaza. We just finished Constitution Garden. We have Quince Orchard Park. I mean, there's a lot of activity in that area already. So I'd really want to make sure that if we're focusing additional resources on this, that there's really a need for it.
I would encourage everyone to look at the proximity map that staff circulated within the last couple of weeks. And I think it's something like 90 or 95% of the city is already within a quarter mile of a public park. And so it's very easy to identify the little pockets of areas in the city that are not within that quarter mile radius. Now, should the quarter mile radius be our test? I don't know. I mean, I know it's sort of the national benchmark that is used by Parks and Recs officials around the country. Seems like a good benchmark. It's a benchmark that we meet with 90 or 95% of our city. But that's something that we could revisit as well.
Yeah, and I think Mike's point about sort of taking into account private green space into our formula. Maybe we want to hone that formula a little bit.
Well, and not to, because I didn't want to get into the specific parcel, but just because that issue was raised. We set a criteria, should we adopt a strategic plan here today, that all residents will be within 0.25 walking miles of a city park. This neighborhood is not within 0.25 miles of a city park, so it would meet that criteria. It also is in an area that would be underserved as far as public green space amenities. And in our strategic plan itself, we don't talk about discriminating between properties based on the amount of private green space that they have. Now, the merits of that are up for debate. I mean, that might be a very valid point, but it's something that it's not evident in our strategic plan, and it would further, I don't know if you do that by regulation or how you do it, but anyway, just wanted to throw that out.
Isn't Constitution Garden very close to that neighborhood?
It's 0.3
0.30.
as opposed to 0.25, so it's very close. But
It's not within the
points.
criteria
The
we
point
set
is
in our
taken.
strategic plan.
We got a bunch of attorneys at the table. What are we going to do?
Attorneys who in numbers, that's really a dangerous combination.
All right, Rob, go ahead.
I hired consultants for that one. Okay, so the issue at hand, and I can make many statements about how I believe, or what I believe about the country's decision to pull out of the
president's decision.
Well, okay, the president's decision. I was trying to go broad here because I'm on active duty with the U.S. Army. I'm subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and that limits my ability to talk about public officials. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the deliberative process that we've started here. I appreciate Deputy City Manager sent an email tonight starting the conversation. It was very thorough and very thoughtful. I appreciate that. And I do hear what everyone is saying with respect to the city's tradition of not engaging in political statements. And, I've seen the wisdom of that. When I first came on council, I was, and the gentleman here can attest to the fact that I would see, the county or other cities putting out statements on various issues, and I would be like, why aren't we doing that? And after a long discussion internally, and private discussions with others about the merits of such things, I agree. I think the way the city does things is the appropriate way to do it. But on this specific issue, I'll disagree, and I don't think we should make a political statement. I think we should make a statement. I think it's important to not only talk about what we're doing, but to stand up and be counted among the various cities, the various states, the various entities that are getting behind the essentially making up for the vacuum that is going to be put in place at the national level should we withdraw from this treaty. And so, doing things is essential. Doing things is the key to moving the city forward in an environmental fashion. But at some point, we have to take stock of who we are and join the chorus of others that are making their stances known as well. And so I think that, frankly, all these cities are getting behind this. They're standing forward. They've obviously, I think, done their own analysis internally that they could commit to this. I don't see the scenario where we do this analysis of the steps that need to be taken to meet the requirements of the Paris Accord and say, no, that's too expensive, we're not going to do it. And so, I was going to make a request a resolution tonight, and this wouldn't be to compel any action by the city, but to authorize the mayor, once the deliberative process is done, and he's comfortable that the city is in a good place to be where we need to be with respect to the commitments that we make, to go ahead and exercise his best discretion, best judgment, and put pen to paper on behalf of the city, as other mayors have done. Before I make that resolution, I'm just going to throw it out there to see if there's any inclination to support that. And I don't want to go down the formal process.
So, as I was looking at Facebook earlier today, my friend and former colleague on the Energy, Environment, Natural Resources Committee at the NLC, and now the president of the NLC, Matt Zone, council member from Cleveland, Ohio, has posted the resolution, an emergency resolution that he's taking before the city council in Cleveland tonight, or I guess tonight or tomorrow. And the reason they feel a need for an emergency resolution, at least Matt does, is that the Mayor Jackson has already reaffirmed the commitment to the climate accords on behalf of the city. So basically the council has decided, or what Matt is proposing is the council vote to back that up. But it is a long resolution, and rather than vote on a resolution tonight without having read it first and without having our own staff look at it, I'd rather wait. And, you know, there are a number of resolutions we could look at. This District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. today enacted a resolution, or I guess the mayor decided to, Mayor Bowser decided to sign a resolution. You know, I think we need to be deliberative. I think we need to make sure it says what we mean, and that we'll do what we mean. We'll do what the resolution says we will commit to. My point in laying out what we've done in the past as a city was to let people know that we're already doing a lot of this stuff. We're committed to it. It's been part of our strategic plan. It's why we're a sustainable certified city in the state of Maryland. It's why we've been a leader in terms of you know, whether it's our stormwater management plan or our green building plan or our energy commitment to energy. So I'm not prepared to vote on a resolution tonight. That's what I'll say. That's it.
I agree. As I said earlier, I think we probably should sign on to something in the coming weeks, but we should take some time to look at what's out there. Have staff put together drafts, circulate those drafts, be prepared to talk about them, and then vote on them instead of kind of rushing into this. Again, as has already been said many times, we can already count ourselves among the cities and towns and states that have stood up and led on this issue for years, regardless of whether or not we pass a resolution tonight or a few weeks from now. And I guarantee you that in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, after we've had a chance to look at some options, climate change will still be here. So we'll still have the opportunity to pass such a resolution and to join some of these statements and stand up and be counted again beyond what we've already done many, many times to have stood up and be counted in the past. So I agree with Mike. But I commend Rob for bringing up the issue. You know, I had brought up the issue by email as well. I think it's an important discussion for us to have. And again, I do feel that after we've had a more thorough opportunity to review the options, that we should probably sign on to something.
Neil, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why we need a resolution to make a resolution at some point in the future. I think we've already got the ball rolling, and we're all pretty much in sync that, you know, we feel there's a need to do something, and we need to have a chance to understand what the various options and what level of commitment that would be. But you know, again, as I said earlier, I think, you know, I think we need to get on board with this because it's such a big issue that we need to be on the right team here.
Yvette?
I agree.
Okay. All right.
So, well, and I forgot one other point at all.
Please, go ahead.
But this one's about the book festival, so you're like, but let me get to, and so it's not a resolution to adopt a resolution at a later point. So the prevailing one right now that's floating around is the mayor's conference. And 211 cities have signed on so far. And the criteria for being accepted, if you look on their website, is that the mayor has to sign and the mayor has to have the authority to sign on behalf of the municipality that he is representing. And so the resolution would be to give the mayor the authorization to make that signature. And you know, frankly, I trust judge's discretion to make that call. And I've made my voice known as to which way I think he should go with it. But I hear what the council's saying. The next voting session that we're going to be all here would be, I think it's July 19th. And so
June 19th.
No, well, June 19th, Mike and Ryan will not be here.
Right.
So it's more than a month away, plenty of time to get our ducks in a row, I think. So personally, I would like to be able to analyze and commit at that session. And that, just throw it out there, and the last point I was gonna make is exactly what Mike said. Kudos, Mr. Mayor, to the Book Festival Committee and to staff. That was one awesome book festival. And whatever you did this year, Mayor, the weather was better. So keep it up.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, so I think we're all guided. We have our position on Paris, on to city business. Regular.
It's still Monday.
Yeah, still Monday.
Did I talk longer than Ryan did?
Doubtful.
I will note that next Monday, our work session will be an update on the building across the street, our new 16 South Summit Avenue building, and recommendations. So it should be a very interesting work session. Let's move on to from the city manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Just two quick project updates. I mentioned at the last meeting that the fountain at Casey Community Center was being worked on. That was actually a demolition phase. They'll be doing the construction phase this week. It might be done this week, which will be great. And then the Forest Oak Cemetery fence project along 355 did formally go out to bid this week, so that'll be kicking off as well. And I think both of those will have a tremendous effect on 355 in terms of branding the city, in terms of beautifying the stretches of the city. So kudos to Kevin Edders. I believe he's managing both of those projects for keeping them moving.
Fantastic. Okay.
Quick question.
Please.
At the last Cultural Arts Advisory Committee, we learned, the committee learned that because of the replacement of the roof and the HVAC system at the Arts Barn, that the current plan calls for closure of 75 days. Is that true? Of the facility for 75 days, it'll be out of action?
That
Michelle?
I have not heard that figure. Perhaps Michelle.
I see Dennis sort of ready to get up if needed.
I know that they are planning for closure in FY18 for a period of time, and they're already putting plans in progress of where they're going to go ahead and hold summer camps, looking at options. But 75
Dennis, did you want to
days.
add to
Yeah,
that?
I'm not so worried about the timing. I'm worried about the duration of the closure.
I don't have the exact number of days, but we're actually looking at consolidating a number of projects in between the roof, tuck pointing, and also the boiler kind of replacement project, and combining all those into one rather than having a number of times in the year that we have to close it down, and working with staff on that. I don't believe we set a particular time for that yet. I think we're still working through that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to economic development update with Tom Lonigan.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Just first, a few biotech updates. I just wanted to bring you up to speed on Smithers Avanza. I recently had the opportunity to represent all of you at a ribbon cutting they had for an expansion they did at their facility at 11 First Field Road. The company has been here for about 6 years, but they did about a $3.4 million investment. They now occupy about 23,000 feet. They'd been a toolbox recipient back in 2012 with to support costs associated with the expansion they were doing at the time. They employ 50 people now on site, and that building is fully leased. They were very complimentary too of the city throughout the presentations. I just wanted to make mention of that. Another company that's been complimentary, Mr. Mayor, was Salubris. You represented the city a few weeks ago during their ribbon cutting ceremony at 45 West Watkins Mill Road. The CEO, I've heard secondhand, was very appreciative of yours and other public folks that came along to...
Yeah, the county executive there, the lieutenant governor was there. It was quite well attended.
Correct. And he has expressed his appreciation for the public support, and it was nice to hear that the company is no longer hiring 10 new employees. They are planning to hire 25 over the next few months. So another nice addition. Also want to mention Adaptive Phage Therapeutics, a clinical stage company founded just last year to provide an effective therapeutic response to global rise of multi-drug resistance pathogenic bacteria. They're taking space at 22 First Field Road, and they are the recipient of a Montgomery County MOVE grant totaling about $58,000 for that move. And finally, this Monday, Institute for In Vitro Sciences will be cutting the ribbon for the grand opening of their facility at 30 West Watkins Mill Road. They are a contract research organization. Nice to have another one of those in our expanding tech cluster. They employ about 34 people, and we did give them a grant for $25,000 last year to support that. I also wanted to mention the evenings in Old Town. That kicked off the concert series last Thursday. Brian Elijah Smith. It was nice to hear, Michelle, through Andy Rosati, that over 100 people did come to the first concert. Again, these are a partnership between the Office of Economic Development and Parks and Recreation. As new residents continue to move into Old Town and new businesses continue to open, we consider this concert series to be more critical than ever. Again, 6 to 7:30 throughout the summer. Michelle, well done.
Thursday nights.
Thursday nights. And finally, with all those people moving in, the U.S. Census Bureau last week did confirm what we thought. We are now number 3. The estimates published just last week showed there were 67,776 people in the city as of last July, 584 more than a year ago, compared to 66,940 in Rockville. So we have officially switched places to be third. City of Frederick does maintain a 2,200 person lead over the city and can still lay claim to being the second largest city in Maryland with about 70,000 residents. However, Gaithersburg has increased its population by 12.6% just since 2010, adding nearly 7,800 residents during that period. So we're on their heels.
Thank you, Tom.
That's all I got.
All right.
Thank you.
Next, we have ordinances, resolutions, and regulations. I'd like to invite Ollie Mumpower from our Public Works Department to lead us in the first.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is a resolution of the Mayor and City Council authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for engineering design services for the rehabilitation, reconstruction of Quince Orchard Boulevard. For some background information, due to the condition of the existing roadway and sidewalk, rehabilitation of a portion of the road is needed. We discussed this project in several public meetings. One, we did a walk on May 11th, 2015. We followed up with a discussion on October 19th, 2015. Proposed improvements include pavement and sidewalk rehabilitation, removal and replacement of existing trees, street trees, installation of stormwater management infrastructure, replacement of 29 existing high-pressure Cobra-style lights with a metered LED lighting system, as well as the construction of an in-road protected bicycle facility. Because we want to engage a consultant with specialized expertise in cycle track design, we separated that out of this project. And upon completion of both the designs, the consultant responsible for this rehabilitation will serve as the prime consultant to integrate both of them. And it's anticipated this construction will take place next summer. This project was advertised on March 7th on the city's website and in the Maryland Marketplace. We received 6 proposals. We opened them on April 7th. The price proposals excluded construction administration costs, which could be done at a later time. Staff's estimate for the proposal was $200,000 for the street rehabilitation, $20,000 for the lighting system. We did not do a estimate for the enhanced stormwater management. So based on a technical and price evaluation, it's recommended that this contract be awarded to A. Morton Thomas and Associates in the amount of $266,800. We're asking for an additional $16,000, approximately 6% to be encumbered for unforeseen contingencies that may result during the subservice investigation. So the total of this is $282,800.
Yeah.
Stumbled by. So one of the things we're asking for the contingency for is really we're concerned about really what's underneath the street and the impact that the roots have had on it. So we took our best guess at what we thought what we would need for that, but we'd like to have a contingency in case we really have to do some further investigation.
Thanks, Ollie. I guess the obvious question is the top 3 bidders are very close. It's not a big spread. It's $5,000 difference.
Correct.
But you chose the number 3 in terms of price. If you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
We had a group that I think we had 5 people that evaluated all the contracts, and it was the unanimous opinion of the group that A. Morton Thomas made the best presentation, could do the best job for the city. So the prices were close, but price was only 20 to 25% of the weighing factor.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Have we worked with the contractor before?
A. Morton Thomas has done the work for the plaza. They've done a lot of work for the city.
All right. I'm actually pretty excited since we live in the neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
To have this done. as soon as they're done building Brown Station, I think it'll be a good thing. It'll be an interesting experiment with the bike lanes. I think the biggest tragedy here is that we're going to lose about 30, 40-year-old shingle oaks, I think, that provide an enormous amount of shade. And hopefully the design is going to accommodate 40-year-old trees in 40 years so that it's not tearing up the sidewalks or the street.
The part of the discussion that we had with A. Morton Thomas, they were going to look into more detail to see if there was any possibility of saving any of those trees. So that is part of their in-depth discussion. And they're very, if we can save them, they're very interested as we would be in saving some.
Great. Questions, comments, or someone?
In terms of what's under the road that you may discover, are we keeping records of these as we go forward, as we do these projects, so that we
Yes.
don't have to pay or risk in the future?
Yes. That's our problem. We just don't, in some cases, we do not have good records of what's happened in the
No, I
past.
understand, but hopefully we'll build them as we go through.
Most
these
definitely.
processes.
Yes, every one of these will have an as-built when we're done.
Yeah.
Great.
Someone want to move the resolution?
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. Thank you, Ollie.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Dennis Enslinger back up to the podium for our strategic plan.
Mayor and Council, tonight before you is a resolution asking the Mayor and Council to adopt the fiscal year 2018 strategic plan for the city of Gaithersburg. First of all, I wanted to thank all the staff who've worked on this. It really does take all of the staff to get the critical measures, the action items done. In particular, Cindy Hines, who helps coordinate this project, really needs my gratitude along with all the other staff because she keeps everybody in line and makes sure everything looks really
We
good.
join you in gratitude to Cindy.
Just to kind of highlight, there were a couple of major changes that we made based upon the draft we presented at the council retreat. The first one was under city administration. We actually clarified the language regarding the percentage of bilingual staff to clarify that that was actually the staff that's compensated. And then we also tried to give you an estimate of those individuals we think who are on staff who are actually bilingual. In addition, under Parks and Rec, we added an additional action item which addressed kind of looking at the summer programs to determine if any of the current challenges in terms of consumer demand, changing demographics, and seeing whether any of those will affect the sports camps, and then we'll make a presentation to the council regarding those. Under Planning and Code Administration, we clarified the role of Kentlands and added Lake Forest Mall in the priority development areas. That's in the strategy section. And then based upon some recent development at previous council meetings, we added an action item which indicated that we would develop and implement a pilot bike plan for Crown and Washingtonian Rio.
Bike share plan.
Yes.
Great. We thank not only Cindy, we thank you, we thank all staff who helped put this together. It's an important process that we go through each year.
The richness of data in this strategic plan is pretty impressive.
It
So
is.
I think if people want to look, I mean, it's more than just the narrative. There's data to back it up. I think that's pretty important. So I hope people will take the opportunity to look at it. So,
Yep, publicly available on our website.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello. Oh, in terms of, having been through the strategic planning process now 3 years, I've seen the strategic plan grow in richness and detail each year, and it was good to begin with, and it's gotten really significantly better as time has gone by. So, while we're here tonight, could we go through it page by page?
I actually brought it with me.
All right, excellent. No,
Because I
it's
do not
okay.
have it memorized anymore, so.
Sure. None of us buy that, Dennis.
Go ahead.
Can I move the resolution?
Please.
I hereby move the resolution.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. That carries 5-0. All right, next, Stephanie Walker, hiding in the corner.
Thank you. This agenda item is the resolution for codifying and updating the schedule of fees, charges, fines, and expenses as provided for in the ordinances of the City of Gaithersburg. Each year, we review the city's fee schedule and provide to you a request to update that resolution. The schedule was provided to you along with the fiscal year 18 budget in early April, and there have been no additional changes since that time. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the proposed ordinance, resolution, excuse me.
Do we have questions or?
Yeah, I have
Go ahead.
one question. Throughout the fee schedule, where the changes are, the phrase "a consistent flat fee to encourage compliance." To what extent have we had a compliance problem with our fees? And if we have had a compliance problem with fees, how much revenue have we lost as a result of that failure to
I would
have good
probably defer
compliance?
that question to our planning and code if they have an answer to it. I'm not sure that we would have a number for you.
It'd just be interesting, but it appears everywhere, and I'm just curious as to.
I can have someone get back to you
really
with a summary of that information.
Okay. I mean, how are we going to measure that? I didn't know what it was before, so that's it.
Okay.
I just had one question. Page 189, but it's for the fee of planning code permits and fences for commercial, new additional and alteration. It's got an application fee of $100 or 1% project cost, whichever is greater, and that's the only instance where that appears. Do you know why we're doing, particularly the percentage of cost as a fee?
I do not know why it is split out that way as opposed to other fees.
Anybody? No?
We'll have to get an answer.
Okay.
The request probably came from Planning Code.
Yes.
So, and I see John sort of writing stuff down, so we'll get answers on those.
Okay. It just seemed odd.
Okay. Any other questions, or would someone like to move the resolution?
I'll move the resolution for the fee schedule. Schedules of fees, charges, fines, and expenses.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0. And Stephanie, you are back to talk about the budget.
Great, thank you. This is an ordinance to adopt the city budget for fiscal year 17, beginning July 1st, of 2017 through June 30th, 2018, and levying an ad valorem tax on assessable property within the city limits. A public hearing was advertised on March 30th related to this item, and a public hearing was held on April 17th. I would like to thank all the staff for their hard work on the budget. We go through a very rigorous process here, and I certainly appreciate all of their efforts in making this be a smooth one as well. I have one item on the ordinance that I'd like to call attention to because it was not in the draft ordinance, and that's an additional line shown under the section titled Other Revenues Appropriated For, and this is the capital improvements line of $2.5 million. That amount is related to a release of bonds from the Crown Development that we received mid-May, and those funds are restricted for use only on transportation projects, transportation purposes. Due to the restrictions on those funds, we have deposited that directly into our capital improvements for street reconstruction, but it is necessary to formally appropriate that funding to that purpose so that we have added it to this ordinance. There are also a number of amendments to the proposed budget that, since we've discussed it in the budget workshops, these amendments are summarized in the attached document titled Subsequent Events and totaled $1,068,376 in expenditures and a matching amount in revenues. This year, we've also identified a number of CIP changes just as projects have moved forward since we started the budget process, and we've identified those as well. In our quest to improve our budget accuracy, we spent additional time this year reviewing all of our current year revenue projections, and as a result, there are a few more adjustments than you may have seen in the past. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the ordinance, the subsequent events, or the budget itself.
Stephanie, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you and Tony and Dennis and all of our departments for, again, doing an excellent job of translating the priorities and initiatives that come from the council and from our residents and from our staff, from other staff. You guys just did a terrific job. So thank you all very much for that. Any other questions? Yeah, please, Neil.
So, a couple of things. First of all, how confident are we that the number we're projecting for property tax revenue is what we're actually going to receive from the controller's office this year, given what we've been through?
It is our best guess. We do use the assessment information that they send out in February in order to calculate that. They have historically been a little bit low, and this is on the property tax information. And the income tax, is a little bit harder because we were told last year, December, this would be of 15, that our income tax base would be down about $1 million. They then allowed us to hold off that adjustment and not put that into our base until fiscal year 17. And fiscal year 17 revenues have been relatively flat compared to 16. So that's a good sign. I mean, it's a sign that the income within the city is continuing to grow after that adjustment has been taken into place. But it does make it a little bit harder for us to budget when we think that the base is dropping by about $1 million, and then we don't actually see any decrease. So.
So are you projecting a significant decrease from what we've received in the past, or are you projecting?
I am not. I'm projecting an increase over what we are projecting in FY17. So not a significant increase, but
it's just interesting, all things considered.
It is.
Also, I'd just like to point out, I haven't had a chance to go through the data that you sent over by email late today, but you had created a fairly detailed comparison of the Gaithersburg budget versus two nearby comparable sized cities of Rockville and Frederick. And I just want to point out that for cities of comparable size, our tax rate is lower, our revenue, the amount of money that we take in taxes is considerably lower. We do a lot more with a smaller size staff than the other cities, so I think you and the rest of the team and city manager and everybody are really doing a good job in providing efficiency for the taxpayers of Gaithersburg. So I think that's to be commended, and I think that it really shines through in the budget.
We also don't have any debt.
And right, the city of Frederick has $65 million in debt.
That was as of the end of fiscal 16.
For their downtown renovation on the creek.
It's a lot for a city that size, so I'd take zero over that any day.
Well, Rockville has 36 million. So
yep,
it's for their town center, I think.
Any other comments, questions, or someone want to?
I'd like to move the budget.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
No, Mr. Mayor, we didn't all have the opportunity to say great job. We got cut off there. So just wanted to say great job.
Please do.
Too late.
Everyone had a chance. Okay, Lynn, you have the next one.
Yes. The next item before you is a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate a Fourth Amendment to an annexation agreement with Washingtonia North. This property was initially annexed into the city in 1991 and involved a little over 102 acres of land. Most of it has been developed, and we have done 3 prior amendments to the annexation agreement. The only parcel remaining is Lot 9, which has approximately 8.5 acres of land. Excuse me, the owner and the contract purchaser of that property have approached the city and requested a Fourth Amendment to the annexation agreement. Under the existing annexation agreement, the use of that property is designated as office use, and they are requesting that be amended to allow for senior housing. Their proposal is development of the property in 2 phases. The first phase to include 224 units, which would include a combination of independent living, assisted living, and memory care units. And then there would be a second phase of the property not to exceed 100 units on the property. They would also, if you all would choose to move forward with the amendment to the annexation agreement, they would also be proposing and processing a text amendment that would clarify that the uses of assisted living and memory care be included as a permitted use under the MXD and not require any special exception process. There are memos in your packet from staff. There's one from planning staff, again outlining sort of the history of the process of the property and the different amendments into of the annexation agreement and the development of that property, as well as one from the Economic Development Office talking about the uses of the property. The particulars of the request for the annexation amendment again would include changing it from an office use to allow for a senior housing use with a limit of a maximum of 330 units total, again, which would be a combination of independent, assisted, and memory care units. No building would exceed 80 feet in height. The independent living units would comply with the city's affordable housing requirements. I do want to make a note here that currently under the city's affordable housing program, we do not have standards for assisted living or memory care, and the request is only for affordable housing for the independent units. However, you do have a work session coming up on July 10th to deal with some proposed amendments to our affordable housing program. One of the things that the housing staff is looking at is also extending affordable housing requirements to assisted living and memory care units. A number of our cities in the area, for example Rockville, do require affordable housing for those types of units. So if this were to move forward more quickly than potential text amendments, that's something we might want to consider as part of the discussion. The applicant has also requesting a provision in the amendment that would require no off-site improvements to be constructed at their cost. And they've also requested that the city grant any necessary easements for the property. And again, I think from the staff perspective, we think that's a little bit too open-ended, and we'd like to have a little bit more discussion as to exactly what type of easements may be needed for the process. But again, the resolution this evening is just to start the discussion, and then if you choose to authorize the city manager to negotiate, we would bring back a more finalized annexation agreement for final consideration of the mayor and council at a later date.
Thank you, Lynn. Interesting request. And I will be curious. I'll be very curious to see what my colleagues on the council have to say. I completely agree with the applicant's argument that there is a need for this sort of facility, and that there's a need in Gaithersburg for it. I'm sympathetic to the argument from our economic development team about is it the highest and best use of that particular spot. And honestly, I wish I knew the right answer to this, and I'm sure whatever direction we end up taking ultimately, and I realize we're just talking about the beginning of an annexation agreement, but ultimately I'm confident that either direction will ultimately bring success, because it's a thriving area, and whether it's this kind of facility or whether in a longer term situation it's office space, everything seems to be working there, and I don't see any reason why it would stop. But this is a tough one, and so I'm interested to hear what my colleagues have to say. Who'd like to go first? Rob.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm kind of on the fence on this one as well. It's the proposal presented is compelling. It's a at least on paper, it's a good project. But I'm not going to discount the analysis that our staff has put in on this, and I've come to trust the opinions of our economic development team, and which leads me to question whether or not this project, which again seems to be a great project in the abstract, is it the best project for this area? The question I've got is, this parcel has been programmed for office space. We know in the macro environment, office space is soft or less than optimally utilized within the county. Although there is the argument that this particular microclimate, looking at the other buildings around there, the occupancy is very high. So I'm not going to quite punt, but I'd like to hear what everyone else says.
Fair enough. Neil.
All right, so several years ago, before I was a member of the council, I remember the members of this property ownership group presenting the previous plan to the Economic and Business Development Committee, where they first presented the Lifetime Fitness and apartment building opportunity, which was then approved 2 years ago. And at the time, the third pad was being reserved for office space. And so it just strikes me as it hasn't been very long in the 2 years for us to give up on the idea of an office space there. So that's kind of point number one. Now, I completely agree and understand that there is going to be a market need. There is a market need, and there will be a growing market need for senior housing, which I may be in position to take advantage of sooner than later. So going back to that Economic Development Committee meeting, that was actually what got me started on a thought process of, the Lifetime Fitness sounded like a good project. The apartment building, really good ownership group, seemed like it was going to be a nice project. The question was, did the city need one, and did they need it here? And that's kind of informed a lot of my thought processes since joining the council is, what do we need more of, and where's the right place to put them? And so at this point, based on everything I've heard from the developers and everything I've heard from the Economic Development Committee and Economic Development team, I'm not convinced that this is where I would put senior housing in the city versus other possible uses for the site. So it just doesn't seem like we're really at the point where we're ready to give up on other uses that may have a longer term advantage to the city.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm where Neil is. I agree with Robert. It's a difficult decision. I think the argument for senior housing or senior-focused housing, whether assisted living or independent living, certainly there's a need for it. I'm probably one that could probably be eligible for it tomorrow or in a year. But I'll probably continue to dwell in place at my current home. So, but I think if we look at the vacancy rate of the buildings, the office buildings in the same vicinity, the Washingtonian South, the Sodexo building, there's a couple of other buildings. I think to give up on the opportunity here when we look at this location as being the western terminus of the intercounty connector that provides some direct lines of transportation to other parts of the county and the region that are economically active. The fact that we want to create an opportunity for employment within the city at a salary level that is going to raise the area median income. I think that's pretty important. But I think the opportunity cost of converting this or amending this to a residential development, whether it's age restricted or whether it's any kind of residential development, is pretty significant. So, in the years I've been on the council, I've had to rely on a regular basis on the analysis of our staff, both the planning department and now our economic development department. So it's hard to ignore their recommendations and their assessment of the cost of this amendment in the long run in terms of development of the city and the growth of the city as an employment center as well as a place to live, work, and play. So I'm leaning in opposition to the request for the amendment.
Okay. Yvette?
So I appreciate staff providing all the information for me and going back and reading through how the original property was designated and all the different amendments throughout the years and everything, but I kind of am on the opposite end. I don't have as much experience and knowledge as Mike to know the best places to put a senior housing place within the city. I think it's okay to have it in that space there. There is the surrounding neighborhood. They are building apartments there. I probably would be right behind Mike in actually being a resident in that facility. In comparison to Asbury, in comparison to a Sunrise, I like the idea of that being in an up and coming and growing environment. I do understand the original intent for that property and that space and that access to the highway and all the other office spaces in the area and the development of Crown and the Rio area. But I must say I am kind of on the fence to
move forward with
move
the
forward.
proposal. Okay, Ryan.
What was Rob's position?
Pressure. Rob punted for now.
Oh, that's convenient. Look, this is a classic case of asking yourself whether the perfect should be the enemy of the good, and I have great respect for all of our staff who've been involved in this analysis. Worked with them on many projects over the years, and to disagree with them is not to disrespect their view, but simply to look at it as a policymaker and think, this is just the classic struggle between planning and recognizing economic realities, recognizing trend realities. I have struggled with this, as I think everybody on the council has. When you're a planner, you can have a lot of fun kind of designing your Sim City, but at the end of the day, how long should we let a property lay vacant because it hasn't gone in the direction that we want it to go in a perfect world? To be clear, I want an office building there, but if it's not going to happen, and it's not going to happen, we can't say it's going to happen in the next 5 years, we can't say it's going to happen in the next 10 years. At what point do we have to acknowledge that, there's a good use, there's an applicant who's ready to do something with that use. It's not my ideal use, but it could work in that area, and there's a demand for it, especially given the fact that I think that sub-area, that sub-economy of the city has been, roaring in recent years, but it's been roaring in its demand for housing, it's been roaring in its demand for retail, it's been doing very well in its demand for office space, but the question is, has it been doing well enough to demand that entire additional building? I am leaning on the side of having to say that, as much as I regret it, I think that we shouldn't let the imperfect be the enemy of the good, and that we should, at least at this point, authorize the city manager to negotiate. My understanding is that the resolution before us is only to authorize a
Correct.
negotiation. We're not approving any final agreement. We're not approving any zoning change at this point. We're not a zoning text amendment at this point. We'd have to go through that whole process. And we're certainly not approving an STP. But, if the city manager goes through this process and comes back to us, and we can't just sort of say, oh, we've changed our mind completely, and I think that would not be in good faith. So if we do approve a negotiation, I think it's a message to the applicant and to the public that we're willing to move forward with this as a general matter. And again, as much as I am reluctant to do that and would love to commit this to an office building, I just am not convinced that we're going to get there by refusing people who come along with okay projects that are not our perfect project. And so I think that's where I am right now.
Rob?
Punted back. Wow.
Yeah, it's 2-2.
Well, so here's what I want to understand, and I'm looking at both our staff who I rely on as well as the applicants, is, Ryan makes a good point. If this project does not go forward, what happens to the property? Does it lay dormant? Does it lay vacant for 5 years, 10 years? You know, I heard what was said up here about the macro climate for office space and the comparisons between, if there was, that we're talking about with Montgomery County, the below market rates that are, that you get up county. But then you look at what Mike just said, you know, there is very low vacancy in this microclimate right here. And that kind of puts me in the direction of, you know, why not just pass on this and maybe in 5 years we get an office building there that will be at, you know, 1% vacancy and we'll be providing a better use. So that's the question that I don't have resolved in my head. I would like it resolved going forward. But I'm with Ryan, you know, we're not committing to something as far as authorizing the use on this property when we're just telling the city manager, go out there and negotiate.
Well,
what I was trying to say is that I don't want to send a big signal and say, go ahead and negotiate, and yes, we do have to come back and decide whether or not we're going to approve it, and we could still theoretically reject it, but don't tell them to go negotiate when you don't really have a plan to approve anything,
Right.
regardless of what's brought back.
The vote tonight I see as essentially we want to pursue an amendment to the annexation agreement or we don't. And what the city manager would negotiate, we might go through and change from point to point. But in general, if he's negotiating it, we're saying we're open to this.
Well, then, Mr. Mayor, would you permit the staff and the applicant be put on the spot right now to try to answer that question?
If you have a question, sure, you can ask. Who would you like to ask a question?
Both.
Okay.
Would you like Mr. Stroman's to?
Sure. I can just speak from Boston Properties perspective. Again, we've purchased a property in 1998, and we've had our ear to the ground for 19 years now, trying to find a tenant, and with little to no success. One of the things that I can just speak to relative to Boston Properties and our footprint in this market, we own about 10 million square feet of office space. And I can tell you tenants in this corridor don't look and say, I need to be in the city of Gaithersburg. They look at the options up and down the I-270 corridor. And that was where I was trying to draw the distinction between the staff's memo and the reality of the situation in the leasing environment. One of the other items to bring up is the fact that there is an office development site adjacent to the summit, which would be and has been available now for some time for development as well, to handle somewhere between 200 and 220,000 square feet of office space. So there is an office space and an office pad site that's available.
That's Washingtonian South.
Talking about Washingtonian South.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just bring those 3 points up just to, and again, it's not to, it's just a counter argument to the realities of the market that we see on a daily basis. You know, the Gaithersburg sort of mini sub-market, the data shows that, you know, the vacancy rates are low. The reality is, though, to actually build a building and develop to a return that's ultimately financeable, one, you would probably need in this market, and it's probably going to be consistent for the foreseeable future, it's not just a 20,000 square foot tenant to kick off a development. It's probably a full building tenant. And we haven't seen 220 to 240,000 square foot tenants exist in the market and wanting to consume that space. So I'll leave you with those comments.
Thank you. Tom, do you want to come up and discuss your findings?
Well, I would just say that I have complete and utmost respect for Jake and Boston Properties. We've worked together on projects for many years. He's very knowledgeable of the market, and we do not disagree that there will not be a new office building coming out of the ground in the next year. It may take 5 years. We did our best to make that point across in the memos that we submitted, that we're under no pretense that a new office would come out of the ground or could be financed in the next few years. All we are suggesting is that one of the ambitions of the city is, of course, for us to have a resident and office balance. And opportunities for new office construction in the city are now limited. We're out of greenfields, and there are but so many pad sites left where future opportunity could possibly go. Staff considered this to be the best, and I understand Washingtonian South is the best site in the city where these things could potentially land. There have been some prospects that have come. I think Jake is familiar with one or two of them that we have toured. It hasn't been out of lack of interest for the site. It's just we've lost some opportunities. They've gone elsewhere, but there have been some interested companies in the site. I wish I could give you a number, Counselor, on when this would happen. I cannot. I can just say that staff is purely concerned about lost future opportunity that may come across our desk in the next few years. That's all.
Right.
May I chime in as well?
Please.
So I think that the point that Tom just made, I think, is really the crux of my thinking on this, which is what we've seen come before the council in terms of opportunities for development in the city have been very heavily focused in recent years on residential and to some extent on retail and restaurant space. And in terms of maintaining a balance in the city, we need to make sure that we also, if opportunities come our way, we have places to put jobs. And the Washingtonian area seems to be the most likely place that if somebody wants to put office space or places where people are going to actually work here in the city and not have to commute to Bethesda or some other spot, that's where it's going to be. Whereas residential, senior living, retail, you can envision almost any spot in the city accommodating those kinds of uses. But this is a spot where it's obviously a job hub for the city right now. I'd hate to give away future growth opportunities for that.
That's exactly the point I was going to make as well. I think, if we look at other development happening right now, if we look at where FedEx decided to locate, it's because it's proximate to at least two major, a future interchange and an existing interchange, and that's where business entities, whether they're the kind of industry that FedEx is, or whether it's other kind of professional office buildings or corporate buildings, you need to have them close to transportation. And to other amenities as well. So, when we saw this plan 2 years ago, or I guess about 3 years ago, when we had the proposal for Lifetime and the apartment building, I think a convincing case was made that the changes in the plan for this property were pretty convincing about this is where we're going to put the office building. And I think for all the reasons we've stated, this is what the owner told us why that was a good location. So I don't, I'm more concerned about the opportunity cost here than, and then there are other, as Neil said, I think there are other locations where senior-oriented housing could end up without having the same potential impact on the commercial growth in the city. So that's really where we are. Most of the projects that I voted on, and since I've been on the council almost 12 years now, have been residential projects.
Yeah, I hear both sides of the argument, and I think the applicant wants to build here because it is such an attractive place, and because the amenities that will be available to the residents of that building are something that would not exist if the building were in other areas, or senior housing were placed in other areas. I'm not prone to living on a prayer here. I think bird in hand is better than whatever the rest of the analogy is. So I'm inclined to support.
Okay. All right, then, let's see. We need, looks like we have a 3-2 here. We actually have to have a vote on a resolution. So this resolution would be to authorize the city manager to negotiate the terms of a proposed amendment to the annexation agreement. What's the pleasure of the council?
I will move the resolution.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, looks like we have a 3-2 in favor. And just to be clear, Councilmember Sesma and Councilmember Harris voted nay. Okay, thank you all very much. Lynn Board.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution to amend the city charter. Under Section 5A of the city charter, every 4 years, the mayor and council appoints a compensation committee, which looks at the compensation and benefits for the mayor and council. A committee was appointed. They did make a report and recommendation to you all several months ago. So the resolutions that are before you this evening, amending Section 5, which deals with the council, and Section 16, which deals with the mayor, would be to implement the recommendations of the compensation committee. The proposal from the compensation committee would result in no salary change to either the council or the mayor, but would build in a cost of living increase for benefits. The current benefit is $4,000 per year, and it would put in a increase of the lesser of $500 or the average percentage of the increase of medical insurance premiums for non-Medicare eligible employees during the previous 4 years. And the resolutions, if they would go forward, would go into effect in July of 2018. Should the council decide to introduce this evening, the public hearing would be scheduled for July 17th.
Thank you, Lynn. So again, this is for an introduction.
I'd like to make a comment.
Please.
And I would too once
yeah.
Ryan's done.
Probably not, a politically safe comment, but touching on some of the comments that we had after the presentation from the committee. I have this sort of nagging feeling that despite the committee's best efforts and their appreciation for the work that we do and their desire to be fair while still being appropriately frugal with the taxpayer's dollar, that something gets lost in translation in the process in the acknowledgement of not only the quantity but the weight of the work that we do as a mayor and council. I am not prepared tonight to propose that we change the recommendation of the committee, but I do seriously think that we need to really take a hard look at this, and the committee and the process needs to be taking a hard look at this in the coming years or whenever this is reconsidered, because I look at alderman salaries for City of Frederick are $25,000 or more. Council salaries for City of Rockville are over $20,000. I don't remember exactly the amount. I think perhaps the mayor and council maybe even underestimates the number of hours we spend working at this job, because it's sort of hard unless you're really clocking every moment that you're responding to a late night email from a constituent, or fielding an emergency call from a colleague, or reading lots of background material, reading newspaper articles, doing all of these sort of ancillary things to this job that you need to do, especially in today's day and age where you're responding constantly to social media and the need to be educated about what's going on at the moment and be able to respond competently. I think we probably underestimate the amount of hours we spend per week on this job, which I guess is a good thing, because we're trying to be frugal also with the taxpayer's dollar. But at the same time, there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of sacrifice by the elected officials of a city this size. And as we continue to grow and have more complex challenges, from telecom to stormwater to all of the issues in between, and the way that we interact with
Not to mention the Paris Climate Accords.
Paris Climate Accords, and all of the ways that we interact with the federal and global community on all these issues, and all of the different outside committees we serve on, whether it's TPB or COG or MML, all of that combined in a cumulative sort of way, I think justifies seriously considering an increase in compensation. But having said that, I'm certainly not going to, rock the boat at this point in the process since we've come this far with the ad hoc committee's recommendations. But I just want folks to chew on that. It is extremely difficult politically, if not impossible, for elected officials to come out and say, we deserve a raise. Nobody wants to hear that. No taxpayer wants to hear that. But the truth is, we don't get paid that much, and we do a lot of work, and we have a big city. And so I just want to put that out there as something for folks to consider in the future.
Neil.
All right, I'm going to take it a step further. I think that I'm not going to advocate on behalf of the council, but I think that the amount of time that the mayor needs to put in and does put in, not only the current mayor, but the previous mayor and mayors of other cities that I see is greatly in excess of what the compensation is currently, and I would be prepared to advocate for a higher number as this deadline rolls around in 2018. I think that the 20,000-ish number that's there today is not reflective of the amount of time that's required to do a good job and the time that has been put in. And honestly, I don't know how you do it. People, when you get elected to something, people automatically ask you, when are you running for president? When are you running for mayor? It's like, I couldn't do the mayor's job and maintain a day job. I don't know how you can devote the number of hours to it. I'm sure it detracts from your ability to make the kind of living you could normally make. And knowing all the meetings and all that it takes to be the mayor, I think that a number in the 25 or 30 range is much more appropriate. It's probably not nearly sufficient even for on an hourly wage basis, but more in keeping with the level of work that's required and has been given to the city.
Anyone else want to?
Well, I'm glad you guys brought it up because I was going to bring up the same issue, especially in terms of the mayor's compensation. I think Ryan made a good case for laying out the issue, and I certainly believe the compensation committee did as best it could to come up with comparable levels of compensation. But I think, I'm not sure they actually, well, what's the best way to say this? I'm not sure the level of commitment required, time commitment and personal commitment from each elected member was considered. Adequately, I believe. So I think I'm willing to consider larger numbers here, but I'm one of the ones who's running for re-election. So,
well, if I could chime in here, and then Rob and Yvette, I'll get to you guys in a sec. I made the case again at risk of this being an election year, and I did point out that any adjustment that happens to our salaries would happen after the election, so it's not giving ourselves a raise, it's giving the position a raise. I made the case last time about the compensation essentially averaging about $13 an hour. And I'm making the case that in order to justify that, as Neil pointed out, either you have to come into it independently wealthy, you have to be sort of crazy like I am for public service and give up some of your earning potential. Those are really the two choices that you have. And so I do, I agree with those points. Obviously, I was making those points before. I think one of the flaws that the compensation committee, as well intentioned as they were, one of the flaws was sort of tying the level of compensation of mayor and council salaries to the size of a budget, because there are a lot of things. I mean, I would argue that, as has been said earlier several times this evening, given that we had our budget discussion, the fact that we are frugal, that we do have a lean, efficient government should actually be a plus, as opposed to, I mean, that's the goal. And not to say that anybody at this dais here would say, well, let's raise the budget so we can, get bigger salaries. But I just think tying the two together, there's a flaw there. And it was, as I recall their presentation, it was a big part of their justification for their recommendation. So anyway, just putting that out there. Yvette, Rob, you want to go first?
Well, I just want to say that I agree with your position and that you should be compensated more. I mean, just from where I sit and the things
The position should be compensated.
The position should be compensated. From where I sit and what I've seen and being out there and being up here, it is a lot of work. Yes, you do have your own business, but everybody else works job, and so trying to balance all of that out, and I don't know, how it just takes a lot of balance, and so I think that the positions could be compensated more with the level of work that's put into this. And yes, we do it because we love it, not for money. I mean, we just
clearly,
yeah. We do it because we love it, and I think that.
But you still got to eat.
You still need to eat and all of that stuff, but.
Rob.
Frankly, Mayor, I'm aghast that you would presume that the council, which votes this into place, would wait until after the election and give a raise to the next term. That's our say. You don't get a say in that unless you veto it. I stated my position on both of these before, and I stick with it. I don't really see the council requiring a raise, and I hear what Ryan's saying, and I'll put in that we were discussing the Paris Accord at great length today, probably while he was billing hours.
While I was billing, instead of billing hours, that's the problem.
And so it really is not an exaggeration, the amount of dedication and time in particular that the council puts in. But, I see what the mayor's done over the past year and a half, and, I wasn't really tracking what Sydney was doing back then. But all counts is that he was not going to be able to hold down a full-time day job because he was doing the mayoral job. So we had a prior mayor who had his own business, and now we have a current mayor who has his own business. And it really, in my view, I don't see how I couldn't do it. I couldn't serve, in my federal capacity, put in the hours to the federal government and do the mayor's job. The comparison cities around here, and really you do have to look at the area here. It's not really fair to look to Arizona for a comparable city to look for compensation there because of the standard of living. Frederick is a strong mayor system, so it's not really comparable. And if you look at Rockville, the mayor is significantly higher compensated. She just happens to not have a full-time job. She dedicates it to this effort. And so that really shows you the level of work it takes to run a city of this size. I had proposed kind of a bonus type system as kind of a check against any mayor that were to come in the many years to come, perhaps our junior mayor. They weren't put in as many hours, but we give them a pay raise. I've since backed off of that approach. But I have not backed off the approach that what I believe fair and unbiased evaluation of the amount of time that it takes to run a city of this size, particularly if you're the titular figurehead of the city, doing many other things than coming here and voting. I don't know how many books you read to elementary schools, but I see the posts all the time. I'm willing to consider increasing your compensation, the compensation for the mayor's position. Not because I think that you deserve to be compensated for the position, but the compensation is really a reflection of the city's residents and their esteem that they hold for their elected officials. So if anyone wants to come and testify and say, this mayor does not deserve a raise, I'll hear you, but from what I'm seeing, I'm definitely open to considering increasing the mayor's compensation, not for the term to come at some other point in time, but prior to this election.
Wait a minute.
Well, I don't think
Yeah,
it's a matter of
You can't
law.
do it. You can't do it prior to the election. It has
All
to
right,
be
Mayor, you stick around.
in effect after the election, so because you're raising the salary for the position, not for the person.
But it's a new term.
So, well, but
Correct?
one has to get elected.
Correct.
It is, but the way that
That's
we've
the
set
way
up
that
the charter would go in effect the fiscal year after the election, so that's
Okay,
why
so we're not
July
talking
1st,
about
18.
4 years from 28, we're not talking
No.
2022, we're
No,
talking
about July
during the
18.
transition. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
July
Yeah,
18,
no.
yeah.
Mayor, you don't get a raise right now, but at the next term.
Well, mayor has to get
The
reelected.
position.
The
The
position.
position.
I'm pointing at the chair, not the person in the chair.
There you go.
Well, I mean, I appreciate what everybody's been saying. I am hesitant, frankly, to raise the mayor position salary to the detriment of council members, because I think council members work very hard as well. I think council members have some pressures that the mayor doesn't, even though the mayor has the pressure of time and having to be at every event and preside over events. Oftentimes, council members have to cast votes that the mayor doesn't.
He has
But-
to kiss all those babies, though.
Well, council members have to kiss the babies too.
That's another point I wanted to bring up.
But
But
you know,
probably not tonight.
But look, I mean, you know, I'm not going to stand in the way of everybody, taking action here. But I'm just sort of making my position known, and that was the point of me bringing that up. I was not planning to propose any
Well,
specific change right now.
Is there, Rob has made his position clear on the council. I haven't heard Yvette, Neil, and Mike make their position about council member salaries. Do you want to make a change, or where are you on this? And I realize for Mike and Yvette, this is, maybe it's more touchy because they're up for election this year. But again, this is about the seat. It is not about council member.
So, when we did this basically 8 years ago, it was actually a number of residents, voters who came to the council and said, you need to raise the salary of the council if you want people who are committed to city government and to doing the work, if you want to convince them that it's worth their time. So, you know, I think we were well guided at that. We were well advised to do that. I think the compensation committee at that time made the appropriate recommendation, I think, and I guess we've had it done twice, right, since then. I think this panel, I think this panel could have recommended an increase over the current level that the council positions have now and the mayor position. So, I mean, I definitely agree that the compensation for the mayor should increase to reflect not only the kind of work that the mayor is engaged in, but also to meet the expectation of the residents of the city in terms of compensating the mayor for that time. In terms of the council, I think we could probably coincide with that increase, but probably not to the same extent. So.
Neil?
You know, first of all, I'm hesitant at recommending that we give ourselves a raise. It just goes against my grain. If the people of the city of Gaithersburg wanted to come forward and say that we needed or deserved or whatever, it would be one thing. But for the mayor's position, as someone who's been observing it for years, I really think that that's a slam dunk. That the amount of time that it requires is tremendous, and that the level of compensation is really no reflection on that. I don't know. It's just my nature. I guess I'm hard to be logical when it's talking about my own comp. I'm not really looking for more money at this point.
Yvette?
I agree with Neil.
Okay. Well, do you feel guided?
Well, you all actually
We
need to
need to put a-
introduce.
we need to
you
put a-
introduce.
do we need to put a number
So-
in there?
Yes, you would need to put a number, and again, these are two separate, so you need to take two separate votes. The first would be for section 5, which is the council salaries. And again, on that one, it seems like there's consensus to
Move as is.
move that one as is.
All right, I'll move that one as is,
Second.
based on the recommendations of the Ad hoc Compensation Review Committee.
Second.
Second.
Third.
A lot of seconds.
Fourth.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously.
And then the second one is section 16. And, if there is a desire, we would need to amend what's been proposed, we would need to include a number. And again, that would be subject to public hearing, so you could still reduce it after public hearing.
So we can do a not to exceed.
Well, no, we put a number
You put a
in,
number
we
in
can
there.
discuss it later.
Right.
So we'd be looking at section 1,
It's section 16?
section 16, and changing the number and the effective date.
Correct.
You'd say effective July 1, 2018.
Right.
The mayor shall be paid blank.
And then the CPI adjustment would continue after that. Yep.
So the current level of the mayor's compensation is,
It's actually about
It's actually
21,500.
Yeah. Yeah, because we've had the CPI adjustments through the year.
Rockville mayor is what, 36?
I don't remember what the Rockville
Somewhere in
mayor-
there. I mean,
Somewhere
I-
around that.
Okay, just Google it.
we'd have to go back and look at the documents that we had before. So,
It's like-
well, I'll throw a number out,
Oh, Dennis is coming up.
unless Dennis wants to come up.
Well, we can always reduce it, right? So we can put like $1 million.
Well, that's why I wanted to throw a number.
Yeah. In an election year.
Yeah, Rockville is at, the mayor is at 31,689.
Well, we have to have a number in the resolution. I will
Nobody
propose
else wants to see the other ones.
30,000
Yeah, I think that's the right
at
number.
the starting point.
Okay, so are you moving with the resolution?
That's what I'm moving the resolution to change the salary effective on, what is it?
It'd be
At
July
fault-
1.
July 1, 2018 to 20,000, or 30,000 for the mayor.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, carries 4-1.
Don't we have to amend the language in the first paragraph, not the second? The
Yeah,
second
I
is what
think
it
that's
is.
what,
It
I
would
think
be
that's
the
what it was.
first
He was
paragraph.
moving
Okay.
this
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
as presented, but with his
With the
change
change.
of the base salary.
Okay.
That's how I understood it.
Yeah,
You'd have
so
to
when
change
it-
the date in the first paragraph.
Yeah,
too,
so when it comes back for public hearing, we will have cleaned up language in the first paragraph of section 16.
It doesn't necessarily have to be the final. We could end up right where we are now.
Yeah. All right. Any from the city attorney?
I have a couple of items
Okay.
tonight, and I'll try to be quick with these. One, I did just want to announce for the public again that candidate packets, speaking of elections, are available for the November 7th city election. Those are available both online or paper packets can be picked up at City Hall. The first candidate training session is scheduled this Thursday, June 8th at 7:30, and there'll be a second candidate training on September 14th. And petitions for candidates are due on September 22nd. I did also want to notify everyone that in the PEPCO rate case, the Public Service Commission has scheduled 2 public hearings. The first one being in Prince George's County on August 28th at 6:30, but the second one being in Montgomery County in the County Council building. That one will be Wednesday, August 30th at 6:30, and we will post that information online. So if our residents want to attend that hearing, they will have that information. And again, I'm certain that we will be preparing testimony for that hearing as well. The other is an update on the 2 FCC small cell actions that are currently pending. Originally, public comments were due in one of the cases on June 9th, and in the second case on June 15th. The FCC has consolidated those two cases together, so public comments are now due on June 15th. So a little bit more time if anyone in the public wants to submit public comments. There has also been a request from the NLC and a number of other of the organizations, including the Smart Cities Coalition that Gaithersburg has been a part of, to extend that timeline for additional 30 days, but the FCC has not ruled on that yet, but I'll keep you informed of if the deadlines are extended. And again, we will post this information on our project page for the small cell so the public can be aware of that.
Thank you.
So Ryan today in an email, and I followed up, is the WSSC rate increase request. They're holding public hearings in different parts of the state. I think the one in Montgomery County is next week.
They had one in Montgomery County tonight, actually, but they have another one scheduled for June 19th, also during a council meeting at 7:30 p.m. In the county office building at 100 Maryland Avenue.
So could we get a kind of a summary of what that is and what that represents, both in terms of the cost to the city and to our residents and businesses, I think. And certainly provide that information on our webpage to let people know what that means, what this potentially means.
Sure.
All right. Anything from any other staff? Dennis, come on up.
I have one quick item. Just want to let you know, staff issued a A&E task order, or architectural and engineering task order, to Triad Engineering for $134,245. This is for what we currently call the Metamue Park Quince Orchard Park new development, where we have the parkland there. We're actually getting ready to do the design and construction documents. And as it disclosed previously, we'll be doing a little bit different process than CPSC because the site is somewhat limited and constricted based upon topography. We'll actually be coming to the public with some proposed designs and then getting feedback from the various neighborhoods, including Quince Orchard Park, Kentlands, and Lakelands, because this is a city park, not a neighborhood park.
Thank you. Anything from any other staff? Not too many people left over at this point. Okay, as mentioned, we have a work session about 16 South Summit, the building across the street, next week on the 12th. Next regular meeting of the Mayor Council will be on June 19th. So until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.
Un